Welcome to the thisABILITY Adventures podcast. I'm Andrea Anderson.
And I'm Chip Dodd from Team thisABILITY.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Chip Dodd. Next to me is Andrea Anderson with Team thisABILITY, the Race Ramble podcast. We have some our teammates from the Adventure Racing World Championships down in the Eastern Cape of Africa. First up, Caitlin Thorne, and we also have Lewis Bekdash, who is with us, and Doug Silk, who did our commentary during the race on our Facebook page, and is starting to start a business doing AR dot watching for teams and races. He's going to kind of host us and facilitate this conversation because we will go down rabbit holes. One thing to know, we've got like 9 or 10 videos from this race, so we're going to have a lot of content coming out soon. So the Race Ramble, we're going to try to keep it to like an hour, maybe a little more than an hour. But if you want to dive into the race more, definitely check out our videos on Facebook and YouTube. So Doug, let's kick it off, buddy.
Well, thanks. First of all, thanks for having me. I feel like I am in the presence of royalty. It was an absolute pleasure dot watching you guys and kind of keeping everybody updated. As Chip mentioned, I started AR dot watch, which I'm trying to give people at home the insight into what's going on in races, and I'm going to be covering specific teams, and thisABILITY has been gracious enough to let me do that. And so it was a pleasure tracking you guys for the World Championships. And it was kind of crazy because I know leading into it, you guys did not have a lot of information where, I'm used to races around here where you get kind of a pre-race guide of like, this is what you can expect, and these are the distances. And I know you guys had very small tidbits of information that went along with that, but you really knew nothing about what was going on until you got to the race. Is that right?
Yeah, they I think because it was in South Africa and there's so many South Africans that participated in the race, and they had done a course near this area, not this long, but near the area. A lot of people were familiar with the area, and so they really just gave us the distances and the modalities, but no other real information until like the morning of the race.
They didn't even give us the distances. They
That's
gave us
right.
the modalities, and we didn't know how far we were going to go on each of those disciplines or they didn't give us any elevation change. So, and they didn't even give us, like, usually they'll give you a range of this is how long the fast teams will take versus the slow teams. I think it was the day before they told us what they thought the fast teams would take. And then we needed to make our best guesses to, what our rate was going to be compared to the superstars up there at front.
Well, and you guys are all pretty seasoned racers, especially with expedition races. Like, how much of an intimidation factor was that for all of you going into this?
I think Lewis should answer that because I think he's got the most expedition races under his belt, right, Lewis? You've done like every Whitest Cinchy there ever was almost.
Yeah. Well, nice to meet you, Doug, again. Personally, for me, my biggest concern is that we only had 2 bins. For 8 or 9 days, that was very little space. But this was a true expedition race, very old school, very, very old school. Like, even like how you had to punch the checkpoints and with the paper and the letters and everything. It was very old school. For me, at least, it was the first time that I raced a race organized by Stefan and Heidi. So, it was really, really raw. I guess my expectation was that there was going to be a little bit more of information, but it was true. Like, even at the start, like when we were going through, the pre-checkups and everything, questions were asked and they were like, you'll find out. You'll find out. People were trying to get a lot of answers from him. And he's like, well, you're here for a reason and you'll find out. So it was a true expedition race for everyone, including the seasoned racers, I would say.
And Caitlin, how did that go into your planning and preparation kind of leading up to the race?
Yeah, so I knew that we had a lot of time on the course, so that was kind of what I was focused on. But I also knew that, the course was designed so that most of the teams could finish. So really, our expectations were to go in and to finish, right? And so we wanted to make sure that we paced ourselves appropriately, and that we achieved that goal. So, as far as being, the intimidation factor, 109 teams on the course is a lot. Like, I think that's one of the largest, adventure races that's ever been put on. And then, just the sheer quality of the teams there was a little bit intimidating as well. But it's kind of like any adventure race. You're leading up to the race, you're really just concerned about getting everybody to the start line with all your gear. So to me, you really don't have much time to think about the 10 days you're going to be on the course until after that gun goes off, and then you kind of just take 1 hour at a time.
Well, and there was a lot of things leading up to the race that the Air World Series did to kind of welcome you guys to the country. And tell me about that experience, because from the viewer's perspective on our side, it looked amazing. And I could just imagine that going into a completely new culture, and it had to feel very welcoming.
It was the preamble to the race was, outstanding. It was just like you saw it in even more, in person. The people at Cape St. Francis were overwhelmingly welcoming to all the racers and all the different countries that were there. I mean, I think we had over 40 countries represented. The opening ceremonies was kind of like a day-long event. So there was a lot of fanfare leading up to the race, which just made the excitement grow, I think, and just made the atmosphere really electric leading up until the race starts. So that was a really fun part of the race that I really enjoyed. It's just the few days that we had prior to meet all the teams and everyone from all around the world, and to experience the culture and just the welcoming atmosphere in St. Francis before we actually started.
And hopefully you guys got to see it, but they really incorporated song and dance and face painting, and the outfits they were wearing, they're banging on drums and blowing whistles, and it was wow, mind blown, never seen this before. And then the other thing I thought that really stood out that I thought was cool, instead of us just watching one of the ceremonies right before kind of the dinner before the next day, they incorporate all the team, or not just anybody wanted to, they'd bring them up in front of everybody, and they're doing the dances together and doing all kinds of stuff. And so it was it wasn't like we had to sit back and watch. We got to participate and see other teammates participate. It was really fun.
I think too, no organization does it better. I think, that feeling. And they also celebrate every level of athlete. So in the opening ceremony, they bring up every single team to the front. So, it takes some time, but it's pretty cool. It's worth it. And then even at the closing ceremonies, they go from, the last person that finished all the way to the top. Everyone's welcomed on stage in order that they completed the race. And they really value, like I said, every level of athlete. So that's a really, really special thing that they do.
I think for a lot of us that got into the sport after watching Eco Challenge, right? One of the big draws of that was seeing the Fijian people and the different places that we don't ever get to really experience and see. And I'm sure as we go on in this, you're going to talk about all the places that you got to see and the different climates and mountains and deserts and all of those things. But that had to be kind of a great experience leading into it, and make you feel where you're not just a lot of the races, it's the same thing over and over again. And that had to feel different kind of going into it. How did that help you?
How did it help us, or how did it make it more challenging? I was like, interesting question.
I think it helped. I mean, just knowing that you're seeing places that you haven't seen before. I mean, once in a while I'd have the thought oh, this looks a little bit like Paraguay, or this looks a little bit like Colorado, but there's always something there that makes it feel unique. And when we crested the dunes on that first leg, it was amazing. I mean, it was just really awe-inspiring, like just dunes for miles. I just hadn't seen that, leading right up to the ocean. So you could see the ocean and the dunes and no sign of people. Like a lot of the race, I got the feeling like there's not been that many people ever to be right here, right now. So for me, it helped distract from like kind of the suffering, like especially in the desert section that we went through. That was really grueling, but there was beautiful succulents, like there were flowers like covering the floor of the desert, and there was always something to look at that was different. So to me, it was motivating. I don't know.
Yeah, the other thing, and kind of getting into the diversity that we saw in terms of the terrain and everything, you know, this is Africa, right? There's very, very wealthy people, and there's some of the poorest communities that you've ever seen. And so Stefan and Heidi really wanted to make sure if we're going to bring in 109 teams from around the world, that we keep them safe. And one of the only ways to do that to the level that they wanted to was get permits or access to private property that nobody gets to go on, like Andrea said. So those dunes that we were on, it was like an elephant preserve, and maybe a dude with a truck that's monitoring the beach goes up and down every couple weeks. Nobody's ever been there. And I think somebody even tried to go back there after the race. They wanted to show their wipers on it, and they were like, no, off limits. So that was one thing that gave us that remote feeling is we did not go through many towns, which that further complicated the race.
So when you guys got started in the race, obviously like the excitement is there for like that first probably like 30 minutes. You're like, all right, here we go. And then you're like, okay, now how long did it take you to kind of get settled in? Because I mean, that first leg looked like it was pretty difficult terrain, into dunes, into craziness. So like, how long did it take you to kind of get settled in?
I don't know. I think we settled in relatively. So you started in an uphill, right? So imagine there were 500 people going in an uphill, and then it narrowed down into like you had to cross a fence, right? So I think you know, we got to the fence, things were a little bit crazy there, and then after the fence, teams started making different navigational decisions. I think you know, both Chip and Andrew navigated perfectly that part, and we got in a pretty good rhythm actually. From what I saw on the tracker, and if you guys went through it, like as we were going through that and then down, we were probably in the mid to upper pack, right?
Yeah.
So I think we settled in a pretty good pace in the initial part of the race relatively quickly. So yeah, we got in a good pace.
But all teams were moving pretty fast those first like 6 or 7 hours. I mean, you know, everybody was excited. Everybody was running. I think we ran pretty, you know, at a pretty good clip with everybody else, with all the other teams for about 6 or 7 hours, you know, and then as it started to get a little bit darker and then the teams finally started to kind of stretch out, we kind of settled in a little more to a more sustainable pace. But I mean, we started off pretty fast and we were not stopping, you know, for any breaks. But yeah,
it's hard not to burn. Yeah, it's hard not to burn matches early because you're so excited, right? Like,
yeah, we were excited, and you know, we're like counting places, you know, the first few hours, and then, you know, by day 6, you're just like, wow, I can't believe we did that 6 days ago.
You probably don't even remember 6 days ago. I think Brent talked about.
We were not moving that fast.
Brent talks about there's the first day and the last day of a race, and everything in between kind of blends together.
Right.
For me, the excitement for me starts settling down once you're away from the other teams. Like it feels like an 8-hour race until the teams start spreading out and the front pack, mid pack, back pack start kind of getting in place. And I think that probably, I guess, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong, but right, basically after we did the first water crossing at night, it's like there was maybe a team up front, but we didn't get passed by anybody. We were trying to catch some folks. We didn't see many teams by that length in the race. So we'd kind of settled into where our pace belonged, and until we got to the TA. So that for me, it was basically sunset going through that water crossing. It settled down a lot.
Well, I think it's hard for those of us at home that are following on the dots, because in that section along the beach, right, that you had all the dunes, when we looked at it, I don't know if you saw some of my posts, but there was literally a line of dots from the very left of the screen to the very right of the screen. So to us at home, we're like, man, they're all just like on top of each other or whatever. But you're saying in that section, you weren't even seeing other teams, and it was dark, so you would have seen lights or those kind of things. So that's interesting for us at home as you're following along and dot watching and thinking, man, these guys are right on top of each other. They're just playing follow the leader. And at that point, that was not true.
No, I meant the first water crossing was after that 20K trek. So we were watching the sunset while we were on the beach. So yeah, we could see some teams in front and some teams behind, and
There's
every
just
once in
few,
a while a
though.
team would be
Not
jogging.
Not many.
But it wasn't many.
Yeah.
Like 4 or 5. It was neat. We got right side by side with Strong Machine for a while, for example. We probably chatted with them for 30, 45 minutes. But at some point, you got to stop and fix your feet. Somebody's got to pee or whatever, and then you get broken up. But I meant that first water crossing where all teams had to make it across the moving water, and some people took their clothes off, some stayed clothed and all that. But once we got through that into another section of dunes, it pretty much, we were away from teams after that, it seemed like.
Well, and how was that? Like, so you're getting a water crossing that early in the race. And I know all of us that race are thinking, man, we just want to keep our feet dry for as long as possible. But here you are 5 or 6 hours into a 9-day race and your feet are already soaked. So how do you manage that? And like, were you like, I see Luis shaking his head like, oh, that sucked. So tell me about that thought process when you're going through these things.
No, the funny part about that is that it was getting a little cold, right? And then Kate, like Chip, Andrea, and I, we were kind of, getting our clothes up, fixing the bags. Caitlin was already in the water. Like, he just jumped in. so he's like,
Yeah.
come on, the water's fine. And I'm like, all right, here we go.
And I have to speak to this one because I think I'm the only one on the team who doesn't really love to swim. Like, Caitlin is an excellent swimmer. And I just thought to myself, okay, I just knew Caitlin was going to go first anyway. And I was just telling myself, I just have to do what Caitlin does. Just exactly what she does is what I'm going to do. And I need to make sure that Chip's really close by. So Caitlin gets in, Lewis gets in, I get in. I know Chip's right behind me. And sure enough, it's walkable for a ways, but then there's kind of a strong current that got kind of deep. I mean, the river was a channel opening up to the ocean. So I thought it was kind of strong, and, Chip comes along and I'm making very slow progress. So I hung on to Chip's backpack. And so, I was less worried about being wet than I was worried about being swept away to sea.
Yeah.
I realize this is a fear that's not rational. So I just kind of mind over mattered it. And, of course, Caitlin and Lewis had to wait for us. But yeah, I was glad to get both of those water crossings out of the way and get them done. And I know, and Chip too is a fish. So I think I was probably the only one actually worried about swimming.
And the
Well, I
first one
think
went
it was-
too deep. Oh, sorry.
Well, I was gonna say, I think it was good. It was the first leg because we were still kind of excited about the race. Had it been like mid to the end of the race, we would have been like, oh,
Yeah, I can't imagine you guys hitting that in day like 7. And you're like, you really want us to swim right now? Like, we're exhausted. We're like, we've had it with, like, you're at the end of a long trek leg that you've been doing for the last 26 hours. And then they want you to.
Well, there were other things on day 7 that made you think that way.
Yeah, they had that covered.
Yeah, that, maybe a swim would have actually been better.
Right. Well, and it was interesting because, like, the AR World Series had some live from some of the top teams there. And so we could kind of see a current, I think, of those sections right before the TA. But, like, they didn't talk about, like, we don't see all of those things as we're dot watching, right? Like the first water crossing that you guys had. So it's interesting to hear those things because all we're seeing is, just like an overview map. And I will tell you, the first day or two when the tracking was on the other site, it was not good for those of us at home because they were just so overwhelmed with the amount of people that were watching, there were 109 teams. So you think if everybody has 4 friends and family that are following, it starts building up. And so it got better as it went on, but it was making it difficult early on for people to kind of track at home. So anything else like super memorable from that first leg where I saw one team saw like a dead whale like washed up on the shore. Did you guys see that?
Totally
No,
missed it. It must
I
have been
see
dark or
pictures, and
something.
I'm
We
like,
didn't see anything. We
yeah,
didn't
we
smell
didn't
it.
see it. I think we smelled something, but I don't think we saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, you at that point you don't know if it's just you already or
Yeah.
Or if it's a dead whale. What's that smell?
And maybe what it was like as we got that one checkpoint in the dunes, but everybody beelined it over to the beach because we knew the beach was going to be better than just walking through sand dunes, and 20 kilometers in sand dunes would have been bad. So everybody had to pick. Do you go straight down to the beach and over, or do you kind of cut the hypotenuse? Maybe we came across at a higher angle and missed the whale. That's possible too, because a lot of teams just did a 90-degree over or 90-degree to the right.
Yeah, one of the things I commented on in that section was how that you have to walk that fine line in sand of whether or not you want to be close enough to the water where it's mushy or still hard enough to where it's more compact than being in sugar sand or softer sand. So how did you guys manage that, and how were your feet in that first section?
I mean, we tried to stay dry, but the beach was pretty flat, but there was like these little rocks that were round. So it was like, now we're getting into, okay, do we want to get off the rocks and back up to the soft sand? So we kind of just float around, and basically there was nothing that was comfortable on some sections. You just have to like walk the rocks. But we did
sometimes you just have to embrace it, right? Yeah. So you guys got into T1. I mean, you gave me a very brief estimate of what you thought based on the distances, and I was lucky enough to get that on your bus ride to the start. And then nobody really knew what else to expect, even you guys, right? Because you didn't have your maps for the next leg until you got there.
Right.
How was that? Because I've never done a race like that. I don't know that a lot of people at home have done a race like that. How was that going into the next leg and not even knowing how long it's going to be, what you're going to be doing, your points, like any of that?
Well, Caitlin would usually start off because she transitions like the fastest of anyone ever.
She's the queen of the transition area.
Yeah, she'd be
She
done.
has that title now.
She has the title, Queen TA boss. So she'd be done. She'd go over, get the maps, and mark the points on the maps, and never made a mistake doing that. But it took extra time, it's like you can't hurry through a TA if you need to plan what route you're taking. So, and sometimes fitting the maps together correctly was a little bit hard, which way do you go on a map that has no points on it? I mean, some legs had 3 or 4 maps in a row that had no points on it. It's like, wow, where are we even going? So it took extra time.
But I like getting the maps by stage better than just, hey, here's 100 maps for the whole race. It's much less overwhelming. You just have that one stage to focus on, and you may have 7 or 8 maps, for that one stage. But, in a race that long, I think you do focus on one stage at a time. So I was completely fine with, just getting to the TA and spending the extra time to get the maps and kind of orient ourselves, because it just allowed us to focus our energy on that one stage rather than worry about, a stage down the line that, might be more difficult because we saw something on the map, So I kind of liked it like that, just to focus on one stage at a time.
Yeah, that's a great insight, because I hadn't thought about that, about how you were just able to focus on being in the moment. Like we talk about that all the time when you're out, like, hey, don't forget to look around and don't forget to do those things. But like, as you're doing this race, you were focused on that leg and that leg
one
only.
leg. Yep.
That's great. And look, everybody was heartbroken with Team 400, missing the plotting of that checkpoint when everybody heard about it. Like, I mean, I don't know anybody that didn't just feel horrible for them. But then Ron Eglin talked about how they had 2 people independently mark the map, then go back and check the map and like make sure that everything was together. How did you guys kind of, manage that?
Yeah, we did a similar system, but usually it was the same person. So for most of the TAs, I would mark one map first, and then I would take the other map and mark it again not looking at the first map, right, but still looking at the original. And then I would count every point on the map to make sure I got them. So if there was like 7 points, I would count all 7 points on the map. But yeah, I mean, I was extremely diligent about that, and I probably took a couple extra minutes than I needed to really make sure that we had all the points, especially when you're fatigued at the end of the race, you're tired. I could see how a team could easily miss a point. But that was one thing we wanted to make sure that we absolutely didn't miss, because you're right, that would have been really heartbreaking if that would have happened to us. And so yeah, the independent marking was good, and definitely a safeguard. And I do think most teams did that.
And one thing that was very different about this race, and maybe it was because of the linear nature, it was like this isn't like a row game where you could choose this one, choose that one, drop this, drop that. Stefan really wanted us to go on a journey. And so the points were just there to say, I want you to go through this trail intersection, or I want you to cross the fence here. They weren't hidden at all. Like most of the race, they weren't hidden at all. You just had to get to the right intersection and know that you were in the right intersection, look around, and there it is. Most of the checkpoints you could see from the road. We were not bushwhacking in, 20 meters into the thicket to get these checkpoints. So that for me was very different. Like you're looking at this rate going, oh my God, this may be hard. And then you start, wait a second, these are on intersections. Like this actually might be not that hard.
There was an assortment though. There were assortment of styles of points. A lot of points were waypoints, but then a few were like one of the first trig beacons, which we didn't know what a trig beacon was. But that was one of the clues, and it was obviously a high top to a mountain. So our first trig beacon, that wasn't a waypoint. That was, you're going to the very, very top. And that's cool.
And you don't have any other choice because that's where the point is.
Right.
And it was thick jungle. You're like, how do I do it? Like, do I attack from this side or that side? So like she said, there were a few that were like that, but just the majority was kind of keeping us on a path. But it was neat. It did progressively get harder, it seemed like, as we went.
And so the first leg, I think, took like roughly 15 hours or so. And then were you guys happy to see the bikes at that point?
Very.
Yes.
And then how quickly
we were
did
happy
that
to
end?
get to the TA no matter what.
Yeah.
I don't care what we were doing. We were always happy to get to the TA.
And we were wet and cold. We like got out of the water and you're at the TA. So you're showing up the TA dripping wet. And so it was kind of nice in a way that we didn't have to stay dripping wet for a really long period of time. And it was starting to get cold. Yeah.
So so you get on the bike and tell me about like the difference of where you've been now into the bike leg, and tell me about that bike leg.
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do remember that we kind of made our way through a section of the mountains that were a little more tropical than anywhere else in the race. There were some orchards alongside the roads, and then we climbed up to the hotel, and the point was on the hotel veranda. And when we got there, the sun was just rising, and the hotel had their doors open. There were some teams there, and they were getting ready to put out the breakfast buffet. So we just lucked out. It was a pretty fancy hotel, and they were asking people to take your shoes off going in the door. So it was a little weird, like, we stunk already by then. It'd been however long, and taking our shoes off. We're going barefoot through this fancy hotel and having a breakfast buffet. And I think we sat next to Team Audio Run, which is a French team. And, it's just one of those brief pauses in the racing where we're like, well, we can't pass this up. It's a ton of food, which we were afraid of running out of. And it's perfect timing. It was a great time for a little bit of a break. So, but that was the beginning of that bike leg.
Another thing Lewis mentioned at the beginning, our gear bins, not only did we only have 2 for a 4-person team, and it's going to be A bin and B bins. You never see both bins at the same time. And the weight limit was low. So there was zero chance that you could put even 5 days of food in your bins, let alone 8 or 9. So the minute you pass something like an all-you-can-eat buffet, you eat all you can eat and some, and take a banana with
you. And then you put some in your pack, yeah.
And water.
Yeah. Well, it was chaos, like people trying to make weight, right? Like people were just having to throw things out at the very last minute just to get their bins full. And I mean, that's even crazier that like you basically have like one bin for the team that you're going to see at one time, and trying to fit that in. Like it's hard with a 2-person team to do that for a 24-hour race. I can't imagine trying to do that for what you guys did.
And they
So
were
I mean that.
also no food in the bike box, right? And I think no food in the paddle bag. And it was like defined food. Like I asked if I could put a scratch packet in my bike, and Stefan looks at me and goes, "You put it in your mouth? Yeah. You swallow it? Yeah. It's food." It's a scratch packet. No, it's food.
Wow.
Mouth swallowed, it's food. Just a bike.
Is that due to like wild animals and stuff? Is that what they were thinking? Is like having that stuff out?
He did not want gray areas. Like when does scratch become tailwind? Become is this food? I can't eat it. It's in a packet. But once you add water, you have a meal, right? It's a mountain house. He just didn't want it. It's World Championships. It's binary, and he just wanted it to be fair and not no funny games of this is okay and this isn't okay.
Yeah. The rest of that bike leg though, it turned into a sauna. I mean, it was so hot. Maybe not a sauna because it was so dry too, but it was a really sunny bike ride the rest of the way to the next TA.
But that was also the first day where didn't a lot of teams like drop out because of like heat stroke because it was so hot that first day?
Yeah,
I think a lot of teams had issues with the weather the first day because of the heat.
Well, and you guys were going back and forth, I think, with Ozark in that first bike leg, and it was kind of fun to watch. And I don't know if you guys knew where you sat, like as a North American or American team, but like you guys were going back and forth with them for second place and American teams, and so like I kind of highlighted that because it was fun for me to like, wow, let's see, are they pulling away? Are they getting distance? Like those kind of things. Did you guys see those guys a lot? Did you? I mean, obviously, I know we'll talk about shacking up with them later, but literally shacking up with them, right? But early on, did you kind of feel that kind of back and forth with them?
I mean, yeah, we could tell because we knew a few of the people on the team. You know who they are, and they're pretty fast. But literally, you probably know this, up until the last transition area, we were still side by side. We're sitting there getting food at the same time and everything, and we know we're both at that point clearing. I mean, we leapfrogged with them the entire race. It was amazing.
It was a lot of fun too. It was really motivating. Like we would think, oh, maybe we're not doing so good. We really slowed down or something. And then we'd see them again. And we're like, wow, well, I guess we're not doing that bad. It's like a nice way to kind of judge how you're really doing. And of course, we didn't know all the teams there. So just those few teams that we did know were the ones we were kind of trying to track. And we did know too that we were kind of vying for that second American team because we knew that Strong Machine had a person that had to drop out. We knew that We Will Survive had a bike mechanic. And so, you get little tidbits of information at the TAs. And so, yeah, it was pretty fun having them to go back and forth with and, great people to have beat us. But anyway.
Well, and I know I've done some international Ironman races. And I know when I'm on course and I'm struggling and I see another American, it's always like kind of a uplifting because you're like, hey, we're friends. And even if you don't know who they are, but like even more so because you knew all of the other people from America, you've raced with them around here. That had to be such a positive, uplifting thing to like see somebody that you knew in the middle of all the struggle.
Yeah.
So you guys get through that bike leg, and we had a fun video like that we got from check-in there at TA2. Where that was right before the storm rolled in, right?
Yeah.
So
you
guys knew that was coming, right?
We had heard that there was something coming, but we had quite a bit of ways to get some sleep and then head out into the fog and some rain and all of that. But the storm hit, I think, the next night, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we went. It was in the next night. Yeah. I mean, these are 24-hour legs. These are crazy.
Right.
Yeah, we did the
Nice.
rappel right after that. We had a really tough night, and then we did that, like, I think it was like 300-foot or 100-meter rappel down a waterfall. Like all four of us are basically the same time coming down.
It looked gorgeous from the pictures. I mean, how did that feel in the middle of this race?
It was cool. But first TA2. So TA2 was a madhouse. And fortunate, you know, Chip and Andrew were smart enough to put in a tent in their bike box, so they went and slept in their tent. While Kaylin and I slept on a, you know, much bigger tent with all the other teams. Man, and people were, that was probably one of the, you know, loudest, dirtiest transition areas. I mean, I know Kaylin fell asleep super quickly, but like I was like hearing people farting and snoring, and it was just like I got like an hour of sleep there, and you know, and there was this guy from from a European team that just was passing gas constantly, and people were getting so pissed at him. Like one guy got up and said, "Dude, like, come on, man, have some respect." So that TA was a madhouse, and you know, and it, I think, you know, one area of opportunity for us is just, you know, transitioning quicker, right? So we took a little bit of time on that TA, and then prepared ourselves mentally for that trek that was coming up, because we knew that it was going to be a long trek, and that we might get hit by the storm.
Well, and I know that you said that Caitlin is the transition queen, but I also heard that she is the fastest sleeper
Yes.
on the team too. That literally, if you turn your head, then Caitlin's probably asleep somewhere. Is that true, Caitlin?
Yeah, I don't have a problem sleeping. That's one of my strengths.
Hey, that's a good quality to have when you only get like 5 minutes to take a break, right? So I take it that sleep was not very beneficial then, Lewis.
For me, not that much. But it was rest, and you know, you got to rest, so it was okay. But
we needed to sleep at that point. And there was not that we have a ton of time to talk through it, but they had offered these dormitories. We thought they were right there at the TA, and then Caitlin finds out, you know, oh, they're actually down the road like 20 minutes, and then
tell about that.
like she made a good call on that one. Like, Caitlin, I don't know if you want to say what you experienced, but you know.
Yeah, real quick, they offered like a hostel for some of the teams to go sleep at, and so I thought they were like right there. We could go right there and sleep, you know, and get some quality sleep. But so you know, as everyone else was transitioning, I was, you know, done. So I went to go check it out. Well, it turns out it was like this 15-minute van ride, like down in like the depths of this town, and it was kind of on this like weird, like, you know, deserted street, and you get there and there's like, you know, you got to go through this gate, and I was just like, no. First of all, we would never get out of there. Like, we would never get out of there, and it would take us forever to settle in. So that saved us some time. Even though we didn't get some quality sleep, I think it was the right call that early in the race, because I think it would have put us back several additional hours. And you know, at that time we just didn't want to, you know, use that time. So,
Man,
so
you guys that right out of that transition, that was a really steep climb, right? Like you went up a really steep mountainside.
It was.
So I mean, and so that's got to be a different experience. I mean, now you're into crazy mountains, right? And then I know some teams didn't get to do the rappel because the rain started coming down and like making everything difficult. And I think at that point you were with a couple American teams. And then I think Amanda and their team were like kind of right there with you guys at the start of that. So, I mean, that's got to be good to have another friendly face to be a part of. And I know we were tracking her as well. So
yeah, they went VAC Ultra Sports. So it was some Germans and Amanda, and yeah, and we did the bus ride over to the race with them because we flew into Cape Town and then transitioned over to the race hotel and everything. So we're already best buddies, you know, by the time we get there. So we leapfrog with them almost all the way until the end as well. Yeah.
Anything, I mean, so obviously that rappel had to be beautiful, and you know, you're lucky that you got to do it, because a lot of teams did not, that were kind of in the second half of the race at that point. What other great experiences do you remember from that leg?
So the rappel was really cool. Like a lot of races, you're right, like we don't get there in time to experience it, or we're shortcut or something, but not this race. We made it. We were psyched that we got to do the thing, and it was cool. It was long and wet. The rock face was pretty slippery, but it's still fun and cool. And it wasn't like a commercial rappel. Like it wasn't one that was set up permanently. Like people can't just go there and vacation and go do that. So it was another feeling like, oh, we're doing something really unique. And when you get to the bottom of the waterfall, we had to make our way out of the canyon. So there was, some rocks to maneuver around and through and in the little river for a little while. And that was exciting. But then once the exciting thing is done, we realized we still have a lot of kilometers to go. We started getting pretty sleepy, but, we made our way around. And I think that's when, we had gone up to a high point to get that first trig beacon. We came back down and we got warned by a team that they had been up to the next trig beacon and they came back down. And that was really surprising to us. We're like, well, why would you do that? You'd have to go way out of your way to come back down and decide to take another route to the next point. But we knew the storm was coming. They said it was really stormy up there. It didn't look like they had any rain gear or any rain pants. Rain pants were not mandatory for the race. We all had ours. I think they're mandatory in any climate almost. So we had ours and we're like, yeah, we're just gonna go for it. We've been in other races where we didn't go for it and we regretted it. So, we just decided we were gonna go for it. And yeah, Caitlin led the way up this mountain, as if she's a mountain goat. Like it looks, as fast as she goes, it looks like there's a trail. But then when you're behind her, you're like, oh, these are just great big boulders that we're climbing up to the top of the mountain. And it got really, really blustery, really windy, really cold. And I don't know, who wants to continue?
It was like gale force winds. So I was wearing my bike helmet and the wind was so strong, it was blowing my bike helmet off my head. So it was literally my bike helmet was off my head and just the chin strap was holding it to my face. That's how bad it was.
Wow.
But we were committed because it was probably going to be like a 6 or 7 hour detour had we gone all the way back down, back the way we came, and then around, because we saw the reroute that French team was going to do. And we were so tired of being on our feet. I just couldn't stomach another 7 hours on our feet that we didn't have to do, So we were like, hell no, we are going for it and we're committed. So we got up there and we got to the point and we were all in really good spirits. We were in good spirits. We did like a video. But it was the winds were just incredible, literally blowing us against the fence up there. But the main thing was we had to keep moving. Like there was no way we were stopped. So we kept going. But one thing that we kind of failed to look at is we had thought that we would go up to elevation and then go right back down. Well, it turned out we were staying at elevation for a good number of hours after we got the point, probably like 3 to 4 more hours. And so we realized that, as we're going along this ridge, but at that point we're committed, we're going. And so like Chip's navigating, and we go for like an hour and a half or so, and it's still really bad weather. And all of us are just soaked. Sopping wet. And it's getting kind of cold. And it's the first time I've ever felt in an adventure race that, had we had to stop for some reason, if someone had gotten injured or, couldn't run anymore because of their feet, I would have been a little concerned. Probably more than a little concerned about our situation because there's no shelter. Zero.
No trees.
So
nothing. It's like
there's nothing.
bushes. We're in the
None.
middle of farmland.
Yeah, it was just like on this ridge, none.
Yeah.
So we really didn't have a choice. We kept going along. And I was also nervous that we were going to make a wrong turn or something. Because again, like if we had not known where we were at there, we could have been out there for a very long time. And if we didn't know where we were at, again, if we had stopped running, we would have been pretty cold. I would have been super nervous about it. So we keep going along. Chip's doing a really good job navigating. And we come to this tin shack. And it was like a mirage in the desert. I was so happy when I saw that. And we all made a beeline for it. Like there was no question. Like we were stopping in this tin shack. And so we bust through this door. It's got a roof. It's got 4 walls. There is a window that has an opening. But the main thing was it was dry, and it shielded us from the wind. So we got in there. There was a lot of crap in there, but you could tell a team had been in there. There was like remnants of a fire that was in there. So we kind of pushed all that aside, kind of made some room for us. We all stripped down, get our emergency blankets, our bivvies. It was also the first time ever that I pulled out an emergency blanket and thought to myself, okay, I really need this to work. Like this needs to work, We're sopping wet, like all of us. So we all, none of us are like super warm, but we're not super cold, where it's like, okay, we're going to make it to, the morning. Right. So we're like committed to staying in there through the rest of the night. I think we got in there at 10 o'clock at night. Well, so we're in there about 4 hours and we're trying to sleep. And then at 2 a.m, another team just literally burst through the door, like just burst in. And, we're like, okay, guys, come in, and we make room, and it's pretty tight quarters in there. But it was Ozarks, right? And one of their teammates was in the beginning stages of hypothermia. He was shivering. He was borderline unresponsive. And so they got him in. And they stripped him down, put on dry clothes, put on the bivvy, the sleeping bag, bundled them all up, and basically just like laid them down. And so he was, he looked pretty comfortable once they got him, situated. But he was not doing well. Like it was really good that they had shelter for him, because he was not in a good state. So we all stayed in there that night, and then the next morning around 5, we got up and headed out. But yeah, I think we were super grateful that we were able to find shelter. But it ended up being the right decision, because the next day, we weren't moving very fast. And that French team that had gone all the way around, they caught up to us. They were probably moving about twice as fast as we were, but they caught up and passed us probably about mid-morning, maybe noon. So we were like, okay, at least we saved some time.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, because sometimes that all you need is that mirage in the middle, when you're in a hurt locker like that. And I'm glad that you guys found it. I had keyed on that while I was watching, because I was like, oh, it looks like you can't tell much from the satellite image, but you could tell there was something there. And I was like, thank God they had that, because we were getting reports that the weather was just horrendous and the temperature dropped like 30 degrees. And people had gone from, like you said, battling heat stroke the day before to now battling hypothermia. That's
the teams had to be rescued from there.
Yeah,
really?
And so it was great that you guys kind of toughed that out, and then got to the next TA.
1 second.
I called that.
Hang on.
Yeah, go ahead.
But Caitlin didn't say that was Ozarks.
Yeah, she did.
Oh, she did.
I didn't hear you say it was Ozarks. I thought you said the other team. I was like, this is Ozarks.
Yeah, so you did shack up in the shack.
Yeah, we shacked up with Ozarks.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth mentioning too that I do feel like we weren't as prepared as we should have been. And I feel like we might have learned this lesson in Croatia, because we were also very cold in Croatia and felt like we couldn't stop moving. But once again, we did not have sleep pads, and we only had our SOL blankets. They're bivy sacks, which save your life, but they're not comfortable. But I had really wished I had my sleeping pad and my sleeping bag instead of my survival bivy sack. And we thought we could make it further along in the race without needing those big sleeps. So we didn't have our pads with us, but I regret that. And also, we didn't have a bothy bag. It wasn't required, and I don't even know if we would have taken it anyway. But if we hadn't found that shelter, it could have gotten pretty serious. But anyway, the learning for me, I think, is I'm taking the sleeping pad. I don't know. I think I needed to have that then. And I remember the passing of time a little bit differently. Like I didn't realize we got there that early at night, because
we got there. I knew. I looked. We got there at 10 o'clock, and we stayed there till 5 a.m.
Yeah, and I feel like I hardly slept at all.
We didn't. But there was no way we were leaving that until morning.
Well, the problem is you're trying to get warm, you're trying to get dry, then you get some rest, and then the other team comes in, and you're like kind of thinking about them. So it's not as restful as just if you were to stop for and go sleep in your bed for 7 hours, right? Like,
And they're snoring. The snoring. Death by snoring. That's what it felt.
you got to take earplugs, right?
I
Yes,
hate
earplugs, we did.
I need better earplugs, I think.
You need a portable sound machine. That's what you need, the white
Yeah.
noise.
Seriously.
So, I mean, it was funny because I had keyed in on that, and I also knew that you guys had only estimated sleeping at like the next TA, but I also know that when you're battling these kind of extreme changes in temperature, you get fatigued a whole lot quicker, and you need that rest. And so, like, I think it was good and probably smart that you guys did just choose to rest more than what you had initially planned, and in the pre-race estimates. I called TA3 the slumber party because everybody was like at that TA at the same time, I think. And that was the one right before I think that you headed to the
Kayak.
up towards the kayak. So I figured that you guys stayed there because it was probably easier to sleep there. You knew you had a controlled place than trying to find a place on the river. Does that sound right?
Yeah, we'd actually planned that going in. I think we made some good decisions. We had kind of backmathed it and said if we can't be out of that TA by 2 p.m., we were like, it's not worth it, because we knew they had either indoor places to sleep or you could get a hotel room if there one's available. They had food as well. There was no amenities at the TA to get onto the water. I mean, you could lay on the ground, but that's it. And then we weren't sure along the river, what is it, marsh grass? Is it mud? Is it steep? So basically 7 o'clock, we would have had to just pull over and just deal with it. And you saw that. You saw the carnage that happened. People were saying, they're shivering to death. And the team Mario's on Vittere, like they broke the rules and went over a click, but they were like, it was worth the 2-hour penalty because we thought we were going to die. So I liked what we did. We looked at the thing and said, there's no way we're getting out of here by 2. So let's just hunker down. Let's get really good sleep. Let's get fed. Lewis and I shared a bottle of wine. We went and got a hotel room. We took showers, and we basically woke up refreshed and ready to rock and roll. So I thought it was a good.
And then it was funny because you came out of that TA, and I could tell that you felt refreshed because you blew right by a turn that you were supposed to go.
Yeah, so did like 3 other teams. I mean, like all these teams in front of us did the same thing. We weren't even watching the teams, but yeah, it was us and like 3 or 4 of the teams that did the same thing. Yeah, that was a rough start.
I think we made 3 little errors. Like we went too far at the power lines, and then we couldn't even get out of the compound in the right direction. And we were just, you give me the hard stuff during the course. It's fine. Coming out of TA, we're just a barrel of monkeys.
So especially when you're not used to having that much rest and food and like all of that stuff and showered, you're so focused on the fact that I feel way differently than I think I should be feeling right now. And so you're not as hyper focused as you are at other times. And those are very easy, mistakes I think that everybody's made in those races. And then you got on what was the paddle like? Because I heard that it was pretty intense.
It was awesome. It was super fun. It was one of the funnest paddles I've ever done. It was kind of like, it was in between that fun, but it wasn't dangerous. You know what I'm saying? Like when we dumped, like me and Lewis dumped like 5 times, but I never felt like I was going to die, or like the current wasn't strong enough that you felt, oh my gosh, I got to worry about, getting held under or whatever. But it was,
because they were sit on top kayaks, right? Like
it was sit on top kayaks. Lewis and I had a little learning curve to figure out how to control the boat. So we went over quite a few times. But overall it was fun, and I think it was one of the most fun parts of the race for me.
Yeah. I heard that on average everybody flipped 4 times. So we were just a little bit above the average. Yeah, I agree with Caitlin. I mean, it took us a little bit, because I was in the back, so trying to control the boat was really hard. And those kayaks were like big and heavy, and then there were parts where you needed to portage. And, so you're paddling all excited, we were falling off, trying to get on the boat. And then you had to carry that heavy thing up. that was freaking exhausting. It was exhausting. But yeah, I would agree with Kaylin. I mean, it was probably one of the few kayak sections that I've done that you just couldn't fall asleep. Like there was no way you were falling asleep on that kayak, like, because there was always something. Maybe except for the last few kilometers, but yeah, it was fun. After, or like third, flipping and everything, then it got.
And you'd already taken a shower, so you didn't need another one at that point.
Headlamp there. Damn it.
Yeah, I will say Chip and Andrew are very good on the paddle. They only flipped one time, and that was in the very last rapid where me and Lewis successfully navigated and did not flip. So it's pretty ironic.
So you're like, what is going on here? The roles have been reversed.
And the suck part, we actually like got through the rapid, but it shoots you into, like, they have these bushes that are just hanging over the water, and I wouldn't call them strainers, like they can't hold you there and keep pressure against you, but they can just rip you off the top of the boat like a rake in your yard. And that's what happened to us. We got through the rapid and just get right into this bush, and it just peels us off the top of the yak. And I was like, damn it, we got in.
Well, remember, I'm a little more motivated than everyone else to not go swimming. So
you're right. So you're like, Chip, keep us upright or else.
Well,
so I understand now why they stayed upright.
Yeah, it's definitely concerted effort on those sit-on tops, though, because both people need to have their balance worked out.
Yeah, I would imagine that that's a lot more strenuous on your body too than just sitting in like a pack raft where you can kind of sit back and not have to focus on keeping your body in a straight position the entire time. So, and that was a pretty long paddle to be on something like that. How were your backs feeling getting off of that? Were you ready to like be on that little trek to the next TA?
I think it was okay. I mean, no problems with the back. I think it was fun but yeah, I mean, with these long stages, you're always just looking forward to the next stage, right?
Right.
Thing was just
me and Lewis had enough exercise in getting in and out of the boat that we didn't have time to stiffen up.
Yeah. And we had the portages, and we had to get out 4 or 5 times just to move the boat around. And this is not like get out and get right back in. I mean, this is like a 20-minute ordeal. Like, we had to walk it down, get past the rapid and all that. So yeah, it wasn't too bad.
And so then you get into another long bike section, right after that.
Yes.
That
was probably one of my favorite stages. That bike section, I mean, we started a little slow, and then I don't know what happened to us. Like, some bug bit us, and we just started like cranking it like crazy. I think we passed like 9 or 10 teams that night. And 12. That's where we like 12. Sorry,
it was like 12, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what happened. Like, I'm like, guys, we're like on cocaine right now.
good.
We felt good. Then we got into that little town. What was it called? Where Chip, you could probably tell the story and how we almost got arrested and everything.
Wait a second. Go ahead, Chip. You have the floor.
Is this
the police escort?
The police escort? Yeah. So we were kind of losing it. We needed to sleep, and we come into this little town, and of course everything's closed. It was after midnight, I think, and we're looking around, we're looking at this church, and thinking jumping the fence and sleeping in the church or whatever. But then I think it was Adam Rose.
Yeah.
Their team comes by and, hey, there's supposed to be a hotel up here. And we're like, we're following you. But everything was closed. So we end up at this like little convenience store that the dude was smart enough to stay open. And so we're in there kind of getting some food and stuff. We asked the guy, he barely speaks any English at all. And we're just like, we have got to figure out something. But then these cops show up. And this is not like your typical cop car. This was like a pickup truck. And they've got 3 dudes packed inside. And they come up. And I'm like, I got an idea.
A little tank. It was like a little tank.
Yeah, tiny little thing. And I come up and I'm like, hey guys, and I kind of explained the situation. I was like, we need to sleep. And you can't sleep now. You don't understand. We're sleeping somewhere. We have to sleep somewhere. How about the church behind it? He's not safe. Because remember, we're talking about, this is Africa. There's like I think they call them unofficial settlements or enclaves. What do you want to call it? It's basically a whole ton of people living in 10 shacks, usually with a satellite dish and a nice car. But basically, guys, like, you can't sleep in this town unprotected, especially with your bikes and all that.
Oh wow.
He says, "Wait, I'll be right back." And he seemed very friendly. I was like, "Okay, we're waiting." So we're there and we're waiting and waiting and waiting. And, Caitlin's the one that like, we got to go. We got to go. We got to go. Like, no, Caitlin, the guy said he'd be right back. And no, we got to go. Like, come on. Like this guy, like he's smiling. He seems like he's got something for it. But either way, so we decide Caitlin's right. Okay, we're going to leave. And so we go ahead and leave. I even told the Pakistani guy or wherever he's from, but he did not speak English and said, "Hey, tell the cops, thank you, but we had to go, So we left there, said our goodbyes, and we're riding just on the way outside of town, like the last road before we're just into the wilderness again. And the cops are there and they like beep their horn, like, woo. It's like, uh-oh. Like, when he comes up, he says, "I've arranged accommodation." Or like, okay, he's like, "Follow me." So he puts on his flashers and brings us right through the center of the town. And we're like all riding there with the GoPro. We're like, oh my God, the cops are taking us back to town. Like we had asked, can we sleep in the jail? Actually, that's why just don't shut the door, but we'll take the jail cell. He said, we don't have the keys to the jail or something like that. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. But apparently he had gone and woken somebody up that gave him the keys to their church. And he takes us down into this town, and all of a sudden he opens the doors and there's the church. There's all the little, chairs, and there's the altar and everything. And so, wow. So we started getting set up, and there was another team that we'd gone by and said, "Hey, he's got something for us." So we ended up, was it Rustproof?
Yeah.
Is that Rustproof, that team? Here's 8 of us all hanging out in a church. We were able to bring our bikes in nice and safe. We locked the door. The guy said, "When do you want us to come back?" We're like, "Hey, 4:30. How about that?" And he's like, "No problem." And sure enough, we got our sleep. It was quiet other than listening to Caitlin snore. And and then we're up at 4:30, guy knocks, and there we go. We're on our way. It was it saved the day.
Listen, you guys have had like 2 blessings with places to like lay your heads when you needed it. And I'm sure, I mean, like getting that kind of sleep in a race, especially like this, where you're in places that you have no idea where you're going to find your next sleep. That had to be a huge benefit for both teams that ended up being there. So then that helped you kind of fly your way to the next transition, right? Because then you guys moved really good down into that next TA. And then that next TA, you guys got some sleep and food before the next like really long trek section, right?
Yep. And I think this is the one where you made the error coming out of TA, right? Is that it?
Oh yeah, this is the big error, because people had noticed so bad. They were like, "Oh no, are they short course?" Because the short course went the way that you were going on the tracker, and I had like your tracker died like as you were going south, like on the site, but I had your personal tracker, and I was able to say, "No, I think they have corrected themselves." And so tell me how you guys ended up going 45 minutes in the wrong direction.
Well, let's go back into the TA. At that point, we were hurting a little bit. We definitely needed some sleep. I know, Lewis, your feet, I don't know if you want to bring that up yet, but you needed medical attention on your feet. Caitlin was smart. She showed up, laid down. She's out like 10 seconds. I want to eat as much food as possible. So I'm heading up to where's the food. And there's hamburgers and hot dogs and sausages and all this stuff. And I'm just like, I want one of those, one of those, one of those, one of those. And I'm looking down the menu, and it said double brandy.
No, that's
50.
the next.
No, that's another TA. You're ahead 2 TAs. No, this is the TA.
Bunk beds.
This is the TA where Caitlin got sick.
That's the other one.
Caitlin.
This is the TA where Caitlin got sick. This is where Caitlin got sick.
Oh,
okay.
So we got to that TA, and there were a whole bunch of teams there. And for me, I started getting blisters. So I'm like, getting to the TA, I'm gonna go get taken care of for my feet and everything. I mean, that bike leg was very, very long. And anyhow, so we got people eating, taking care of their feet. We got some sleep there. I actually took a shower there too. And then we were out. We left in really good spirits. Like we're chatting and chatting and chatting and chatting and chatting and chatting and chatting. Somebody forgot to look at the map and the compass.
Somebody, we're chipping
Well,
this.
we knew the last TA we had made a few missteps coming out of the TA. So we're like, okay, we're going to be super diligent on the maps. We even said that to ourselves. We said, we're going to be super diligent. And so first off, when we first came out of TA, we went the wrong direction. We went the wrong direction. So then we had to turn around, and then we went 40 minutes the wrong direction the other way. You know,
You missed
like
the turn.
I don't know, we
Yeah.
just couldn't get our act together. I don't understand it.
And I felt like I was being diligent too. Like I was looking at the map too, and I tried to verify too. This is the right way, right, Chip? Like, oh, we
Yeah,
were just thinking it should be easy. I'm just kind of, oh yeah, sure, let's do that. And then an hour later, we're like, we are going completely the wrong way. That was
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
That was our
It's
worst.
almost like
Yeah.
coming out of the TAs. We're so excited, we're refreshed, and we're and Lewis is right. We're chatting, and we're just not really paying attention to where we should go to get started.
Yeah.
We did that
Well,
two
and
TAs
it's
in a
funny
row.
because you guys had to walk almost like directly back to that TA, right, to get
We
back
did.
on the patch.
Yeah, that was like
Painful.
I think it was an
That's
hour
got to
and a
be
half
so
mistake.
frustrating. Yeah, it was. It was 45 minutes each way.
Yeah, it was an hour and a half mistake.
Yeah.
And we
That's a
knew we
big
were
mistake.
ahead of a few teams. Like we were all excited. We're leaving TA. We feel refreshed and good. We're ahead.
Yeah,
and
we
then,
were.
you just gave up an hour and a half. Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
No.
you guys were way ahead of Amanda's team.
Yep.
Ozark, like you were ahead of everybody leaving that TA, and then you made the mistake. And I was like, oh, because I mean, so how did that affect your mental state? You know, to feel that kind of mistake and to feel that kind of letdown of, wow, we just cost ourselves that time, or does that even bother you at this point in the race?
I
We
don't
weren't
think
chatty
I
anymore.
mean, we were chatting and we're like, all right, we messed up. We're just gonna keep at it. But then I think, then we started getting on the right trail. We started going up that saddle, and I think we needed more sleep, right?
Well,
So
I
go
just
ahead.
want to say there's another thing that I think every adventure racer just has to be good at. You have to forget the mistakes. You have to move
Right.
on. You can't dwell on it. You can't get mad at each other. You can't.
You have to be a goldfish.
Yeah.
You have to be a goldfish and have that quick memory where you're like, wait, what just happened? Okay, yeah, let's just keep moving
Yeah,
forward.
and I think that was everyone's attitude. Like, all right, we screwed up. Let's just get back on the trail, and let's do this thing right.
But I do remember like appreciating Caitlin and Lewis not being like, man, you guys, that like obviously we were all disappointed and kind of mad. And you guys should have been especially mad at the people holding the maps. But again, there's no place in adventure racing for anger. It's like, you just got to push that down and be like, well, this is what we've got now. So anyway,
Right.
we got started finally, and that was a rough, long leg.
That was an awful leg. So if in hindsight, Lewis is right. What we were excited to beat teams out of there. So we didn't stay at that TA as long as we should have. We, in hindsight, and probably my fault because I always push the teams out, but we should have stayed there and slept a few more hours because, we got back on our feet, literally. We started trekking, but we were tired, and we ended up stopping and sleeping on the trail, and it was cold and wet. We didn't sleep well. At that point, I had food poisoning from that TA. So like I was throwing up. And then literally, I think Lewis, 6 teams passed us. Yeah.
So
6 teams from that TA passed us, while we were sleeping. So then, we get up around dawn, and we continue, but then that day was super hot and we were completely exposed trekking that entire day from one mountain range to the other. And it was the most miserable day of the entire expedition. I was completely miserable. I had food poisoning, so I wasn't eating anything. I was, of course we were all hot because we were completely exposed, just walking on this flat terrain, across Africa, literally felt like we were in the desert. But I don't think we said much that whole day.
No, because
one foot in front of the other.
we're forgetting one thing here is that before the race started, Chip and Andrea already had like a little stomach bug.
Oh yeah.
So they went into the race with a stomach bug, and then it got worse and worse and worse. And then Caitlin got her food poisoning. So man, we were stopping, pooping, throwing up, pooping, throwing up, pooping, throwing up. Like,
Yeah, it was miserable.
It was bad. And I mean, kudos to you guys because you really pushed through. And that day, Caitlin's right. I mean, you were praying to God to find a shadow in that desert. Like there was nothing there, absolutely nothing. And you know, I was getting, I mean, I was walking slow, kind of taking care of my feet. I was in the back, but I'm like really worried about these three, because I'm like, if they start getting dehydrated here, that's it. The race is over. I mean, I could push through my feet and everything, but if Caitlin gets dehydrated, she had by. I remember at one time I was counting how many times she was throwing up. She was at 21.
Wow.
21 times, and not like just like it was really bad. So I'm like, Caitlin just gets dehydrated, Andrew and Chip get dehydrated in the desert. That's it. We're done.
Well, and here's the other thing is like you don't have places that you can just stop and like get more food to put back in you. Once it's out of you, like you're not carrying anything. So yeah, that's
I actually did run out of food during the race, but I was like sick at the time and I wasn't eating anything anyway. So I was like, don't matter.
Like, just give me that stick, I'll chew on it and it'll be the same thing.
Yeah, but I tell you, that leg was the one leg. Like usually I'm constantly on the team, like let's go. That was the one leg we would find like some random tree and we would stop and I would pass out. And Chip was having to like tell me, hey, it's time to go. I was so tired and out of it.
Well, you know, it's funny because I think in races, everybody's roles kind of change throughout the race, right? Like you have somebody who's super strong, you have somebody who you have to carry. I know like that those roles can change quickly or they can be like that for very long periods of time. And that's what makes a great team, is being able to lift each other up when you need it, and be there, and then you know, to be able to push through, because those things, I mean, that couldn't have been comfortable for you. But you know, your teammates had grace, you know, in what you're doing, because they've also felt that same thing. So
literally, like I'm glad to know that Lewis was keeping an eye on all of us, because I knew Caitlin was throwing up and not eating, but like I couldn't let myself think about that because well, first off, she suffers in silence anyway. And like Lewis said, Chip and I have been having diarrhea for days. So you know, yeah, being without water was pretty critical. It kind of felt almost as dangerous as it felt being on that ridge in the cold, except it was just the extreme opposite, you know, no water and full sun, and we're all of the fluids in our bodies are coming out. Except for Lewis.
Here, Caitlin, take the electrolytes. Take the freaking electrolytes.
Yeah, I did.
And we did not have energy to talk. I remember thinking, well, I don't know how to make Caitlin feel better, because usually when she's not feeling great, she doesn't want to talk.
I don't talk.
I'd be like, I don't want it to feel uncomfortable, so I'll kind of just like walk beside her for a little bit. But then that feels uncomfortable too, because neither one of us had any energy to be like thinking about what to talk about. Like it's the last thing you want to worry about is like small talk when you're like hoping you're not going to poop your only pair of leggings that you're wearing.
Well, I know I always tell people, I'm like, look, I mean, everybody that knows me knows I hardly ever shut up. So when I shut up in a race, you need to check on me, because I'm probably hurting really bad. Wild Bill can attest to that at Epic a couple of years ago. But so you guys, I mean, that last trek, you guys were up on a high thing and then you came down, right? Like that descent, I mean, that's got to be a killer at that point in the race. Like even just going down, especially Lewis with your feet hurting.
Lewis, your feet. Tell them about your feet. That was awful for you.
That was my low point. That was my low point. My blisters were like, I mean, I was doing okay during the desert, you know, chugging along. But then that downhill, that was my low point of the entire race. Like we got to the bottom after that. So I was talking to some of the top teams, you know, the Ecuadorian teams, and even they took 8 hours, 7 hours just going down that hill. Like it was like it took a toll on a lot of people. But for me, that, you know, we hit I hit my low point. We got to the bottom, and then just before the TA, you know, we had to cross this muddy, disgusting thing, and I'm like, every time my feet get wet, like everything just moves around, and so I stepped on something in the mud, and it like I almost fainted because of the pain. Like it was so, I mean, I had to hold on to Chip because I'm like, dude, I'm gonna faint. Like I'm gonna faint. Like it's super painful right now.
I
So
think you
that to
said
me
that
that
was
was my
the
low point.
worst. Didn't you say at that time, you said this is the worst pain I've ever felt?
This is like, it was like, I've never, I mean, I had my issues in Paraguay and everything, but I hit something in that water that just, I don't know, hit a nerve or something. And I just felt it up in my head and I was like ready to like, fall off. So that was painful. But then, talking to my other friends and my other teams, they're like, yeah, that thing was miserable. Like it was the worst ever.
Well, it's funny because those of us at home, they're like, oh, they're probably looking forward to that downhill. I know better that I know that downhill probably is worse than going uphill because you're having to control your body all the way down. And now it's putting pressure on different parts of your shoes and different parts of your body that you haven't been doing for the last
And it was
24
pointy
hours.
rocks. And it was pointy rocks. So it wasn't like cobblestones. It was like pointy rocks and it was hard floor. So yeah, for me that was my low point. Like I got to the TA and actually my wife and my daughter were there and I made like a little camp there to sleep and they recorded me and I don't remember that recording. Like I was like I don't remember that.
We
But
were
yeah,
all
that's-
rough at that TA. Like we got to that TA and Caitlin was immediately in her sleeping bag next to the fire. Who
Oh,
cares
yeah,
what
that-
food-
And
That was-
asleep probably because it was instantly, right?
Instant.
yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
this is
That's
just
where
like-
you had the bottle of brandy or
Yeah,
something.
it's like Lewis was getting his feet fixed. I just wanted to eat everything that I could eat. But then at the bottom of the menu, there's these double brandies and these double whiskeys. And I was like, well, apparently that's part of adventure racing. So I had a double brandy and then that bottle ran out. And so then I had a couple double whiskeys and then 2 or 3 meals. And all of a sudden the word goes around the TA, like, that guy keeps ordering double whiskeys. Like, even the one guy was like, what does this do for you? I was like, it's going to put me to bed is what it's going to do. So I felt like a baby that night.
The Moon Howlers will be very proud of the whiskey. Hopefully it was around midnight. And maybe you howled at the moon. At least Luis probably did when he stepped on the rock in the river.
But I think it was like maybe I was on my 3rd or maybe 4th. I wasn't counting. And the guy eventually just like handed the bottle and said, you can pour them yourself. You take what you need, bro. And I was like, yes.
But I mean, you didn't mention that it wasn't even supposed to be on the menu for adventure racers. It just, that particular facility, they had a menu that they had ongoing that they just didn't remove that from the, I think you were
So
the
that was just the Chip Dodd menu then.
Yeah. The word spread. Like, you're the
Oh,
guy.
man.
You're the one that was drinking the whiskey last night. Yeah, that was funny.
So you guys were in that transition with a lot of teams, right? I mean, a lot of teams that you've been going back and forth with. And then you have another long bike leg ahead of you. But that means you only have 2 legs left, right?
But that also, the mindset shifted there. And I think Caitlin and I talked about it, like under this little tree with 3 feet of shadow that were crammed. But I think it mentally, that's where we were like, we're not competitive anymore. We need to really focus on getting the 4 of us across that finish. We're all falling apart, whether it's feet or diarrhea or puking. And so I remember being at the TA and I think everybody was asleep and I'm still there drinking my whiskey and eating another burger. And that's when Ozarks came in and they just hit the sack quick because they were going off the rails too. I think Mike had come over and said, hi, hey, what are you doing? Da, 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 and how are you guys? And I was like, dude, it has been so much fun being competitive and leapfrogging with you. But I'm just telling you, we're done. We're getting to the finish. That's it. We're not pushing. We're not chasing you. So congratulations. And he's like, dude, shook the hand. He was like, we're in the same boat you're in, man. We are just holding it together. So he's like, let's just keep it going. Don't quit. We can do this and we'll see at the finish, But that mentally for us became, we're not pushing anymore. We're trying not to die, not to break down, not mentally, physically, emotionally. That was a big turning point for the team.
Yeah, we stayed in that TA a long time, and Chip is right. At that point, we were not pushing it. We were like, okay, we need to figure out, we need to make it to the finish line. So, we were there with a lot of teams, but we were one of the last ones to leave. We were there with a lot of teams, and we stayed there for a while. But there was only a few teams in that TA when we left. So we really took our time there, which I think did pay off. We needed that. We needed that rest and really just that mental recharge.
I could definitely tell on the tracker that you guys had a better drive than a lot of other teams on that bike ride. And I think it was because you took that extra time, because a lot of other teams kind of like similar to what you guys did when you left early and then you had people pass you on that trek section, while you were trying to get some sleep. it probably paid off. And then, you know, we were lucky to get at the end of that bike leg, that great interview that thank you boys for being emotionally available for everyone. Because like I was watching it and I'm like, man, I would be just an emotional wreck at this point in the race. And as soon as you guys start mentioning your family and the people, like I was like, oh, it's over. Chip is done. And
Yep.
so it was great to see. And I mean, I can just imagine I mean, you guys are almost at the end of this bike leg and know you have one leg left, right? And you can walk, so you can get through it. So that had to strengthen kind of how you were feeling going through that last bike leg. And it looked like it was pretty countryside, you know, not crazy elevation gains, but nothing flat either. So anything super memorable from that?
There was a lot of hike a bike in the beginning, I think, when we came out that
At the end.
and you know, we're not pushing hard at this point. We're not going to grind it out as hard as we can and burst into sweat. It was getting hot. And you know, Caitlin's just barely starting to eat food, and Lewis's feet were still.
Yeah, it was a rough start for me and Lewis. Andrea was just kicking total butt on that leg to start, and I was super struggling. And you know, I think Lewis might have felt kind of the same way with his feet. So it was tough getting started, but I think we kind of got warmed up, and then it was the most gorgeous ride, I think, of the race. Just these big mountain views on these ridge lines, and just pretty incredible. So, you know, about midway through that ride, you know, once we got to the top of that elevation, started kind of coasting down, we started having some fun with it. But yeah, it was rough in the beginning, but I think we kind of paced ourselves well. And then we had a great stop at someone's little house, like a little business, and we were able to chat. And then a few miles down the road, a family was waiting at the end of their driveway with these fresh biscuits with jam. And I mean, oh, that was just incredible. That was kind of the first time I really started eating food, and just to have, you know, that blessing as I'm like 24 hours, you know, getting over my, you know, food poisoning. I mean, that was just a huge lift for me. But yeah, that was a pretty ride. And, you know, towards the end, we were struggling. We were just ready to, I mean, Chip was tired. Chip, remember, he had to keep stopping because Chip was, I mean, and Chip doesn't usually get like that. Chip's one of, you know, our strongest guy. And he's never the one to stop and want to sleep. But we had to stop a couple times when we were almost to the TA, just because, you know, again, we've been on the course for 8-9 days at that point, and we were really struggling. And, you know, when we finally made it to the TA, we were really happy to be there because we knew we were going to finish. And you're right, we knew there was only one leg left. And a lot of teams were still struggling once they got there. But, you know, and we were a little worried about Lewis's feet, especially since we had gone through a lot of water. We had meant to take like a high route on the bike ride, but we accidentally took a low route, which ended up getting Lewis's feet wet continually. So that didn't, you know, that wasn't really good for him. So we were a little worried about his feet when we got there. But, you know, I give kudos to Lewis. Like he never mentioned not finishing or not being able to do it, but you could tell he was in immense pain on every step that he took. But he, you know, totally was committed to gutting it out. And we got to that last transition, you know, Stefan had even said, hey, I'll give teams the option to basically bike to the finish. But we wanted to do the course as, you know, the full course as it was. So we were committed to doing that final trek.
Well, and I'll tell you, there was a couple of route choices that I highlighted because you saw people take different ways, right? Yes. Like Ozark took a way that was way off of the recommended route. You guys took the recommended route, and I think Amanda's team took a way that was almost the opposite of what Ozark did. And I think that, the route that you took, I think, was at least an hour difference than those other routes. But then you're also, like, it sounds like you went through some extra water that maybe other teams didn't by staying on those higher. They were up more on the mountain ranges areas. So
that bike leg towards the end of the bike leg, it was like a cemetery. First, it started raining again. Really cold. And there was a lot of hike a bike again. So my feet got wet. I was again kind of struggling, and Chip was falling asleep. So we really slowed down on that last part. Andrea and I think Kaylin, like they were at the front, just guys, come on, let's go, kind of keeping us awake while Andrea was pooping every 5 minutes and Kaylin was recovering.
I was pooping too.
But it was like literally we were passing teams, like you saw them on their BVs, and I think we passed Ozarks there. They were on their BVs, then we passed this other team, and there was like a
I saw when the pass
them. Yeah. And you just saw people dying in the way over there because it was that last part of the bike leg was really tough. So I literally, when we got to the pavement, I kissed the pavement because it was like, oh my god, finally pavement.
We're not on trails anymore. Yay.
Yeah. I mean, although it was beautiful, it was like, for me, after we stopped in that little house with the water, I kind of recovered and I felt a lot better. But yeah, that last part was tough.
I can imagine when you guys packed up your bikes at the end of this leg, you were like, I am so glad I don't need to see you again.
You didn't have to pack it up.
Yeah, even better. Yeah, we didn't have to pack them
We
up.
didn't even have to.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
nice.
The race organization even washed our bikes for us and
look at that.
Put them back to the end of the race. So we eventually had to pack them back up, but not then.
Well, so as you got into that last transition and you're heading on this last trek, which was the big dunes and and it started raining again. One of the things, and I highlighted in the race, I said something in the first post where I said, the best teams in the world did this in this amount of time. And almost immediately after I posted it, I literally in my head thought, thisABILITY is one of the best teams in the world. And I know you guys may not think that or weren't thinking that at the time. But for those of us that are humbly watching at home and watching you suffer through this, you were on the course with the best teams in the world. And you were strong enough to be clearing the course on one of the hardest. Every interview that I watched, people talked about this being the hardest race they'd ever done. Between the conditions and the terrain and everything that you had to face. And to me, and I know a lot of your followers, and I encourage them to make sure that they let you know like how they felt about you and what you were accomplishing. But to me, you guys proved yourself as one of the best teams in the world. And I want to acknowledge that. And I want to know kind of how you think about that. Maybe not. Maybe tell me about what you were thinking at the time going into that last leg. And then like kind of now looking back on it.
We were not thinking we were one of the best teams in the world.
No way.
And you might have changed your mind about that when we decided to turn away from CP72. I still think about that and am a little bit regretful because so CP72 was the crux for us in that leg. We had done okay getting there, but we were quite slow. It had started raining again. We started needing to go on a path that had higher grass that was wet too. So feet were wet. The reality wasn't looking as much like the map as it had been. And we'd been warned that the point was a little bit more west than it was plotted. And in the meantime, Chip is falling out. He is barely coherent, just very, very sleepy. And
I think I had a fever. I think that night on the bike, I think I had a fever because when I got to the TA, I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to put anything in. My body wanted to crash. I needed to stop moving. And it was way more than just sleep. I literally think it was a fever for about a 12-hour period.
Yeah. So, we all had things we were battling, and we attacked the point once, we attacked the point twice, and we had an idea that we probably just needed to do it again and go further, but that would mean going through water again.
Lots of water. Like there was chest deep water in multiple places. It was a tough point. And I think the biggest thing was we didn't want to put Lewis through that. And we weren't even that positive. It's like, I think it's way out there, but 9 days into this race where you feel like at that point, I was just like, to me personally, I was kind of like, I'm done, and I didn't want to drag Lewis through that. But the other part of me was like, man, we've been out here for 9 days, and Andrew, Andrew's right. You think in hindsight, you're like, well, why couldn't you just go get that point? But all four of us, I think Andrew was probably the strongest at that point, but all four of us were just totally wrecked, more so than we had ever been. So looking back, of course, it was easy for us to miss it. You think back, gosh, why didn't we go for it? But, at that point in time, we were just mentally wrecked, physically wrecked. And that's kind of when we made the decision, okay, let's just finish the race.
I can tell you from at home, like, I think, first of all, Andrea, that doesn't change anything about what any of us thought about what you guys did for this entire thing. Second, I think all of us, there was a lot of confusion about whether or not you guys had additional time, right? Because we were being told by some of us that like they were going to leave it open till the whole next night. If you came in before the awards ceremony, you were fine. And then some of them were saying like, oh, it ends like at midnight. And so like there was a lot of kind of confusion. I don't think anybody really know. I know Jason Magnus said something. He's like, I don't, like, nobody knew. Everybody was commenting like, when do they have to be back? And so we all thought that after you had attacked it a couple times and we saw like the difficulty in trying to get to it, that with the rain and the darkness and obviously 9 days of shit, and we had actually gotten reports about Lewis's feet. So like, I think everybody kind of understood. I think they're probably just done. And I don't think anybody faulted you for that decision.
Well, you're right about the deadline. In the back of our minds too, we thought we had a midnight deadline. And so we're thinking, hey, we're running really close to that. We need to just go to the finish. And so that was a large part of the decision too. Yeah. The midnight deadline that Stefan had personally, I think, told Chip, and so you're right. There was a lot of confusion and probably several factors that led to that, final decision that we were just gonna, forego 72 and kind of make our way to the finish line.
And let me
because it's easy for us sitting at home just to say, oh, why didn't they just like find a shelter like for the rain, go sleep for a few hours, right where they're at, and then go back out. But like, we're not in your shoes. And especially when you're in a race like this at the point you are, and all four of you are in agreement, you do what all four of you are in agreement with.
So let me explain the 12 o'clock cutoff, because it from an outsider perspective, it probably seemed confusing. Our first race in Rodrigues, we were the last team on the course. And as we were getting near one of the last TAs, one of the volunteers said, Chip, Stefan wanted me to tell you it'd be really nice if you guys could come in right around 8 o'clock on Friday night, because there's going to be a party and music and all the volunteers, they would like to get off the course. But if you really want to stay out till Saturday until noon or 10 or whatever, we'll do it. But man, it would be cool if you came in Friday. So that was my first Stefan, like, this guy is crazy. And then the second one was in Lesotho. Again, this is a 7-day race or 5 days, I can't remember. And I asked Stefan mid-race, when's the cutoff? Like, when are we supposed to be at the finish? And his comment was, don't miss the bus. And what he meant was the bus that takes us from Lesotho back to the Johannesburg airport. After the race is done, all the teams get on the bus and they head back. He said, don't miss the bus. So now I'm used to 2 races with Stefan of no end in sight other than these hard cutoffs, either partying or don't miss the bus. At that TA, when we showed up, and again, I'm dying. I got a fever. I just want to lay down and do nothing. And we've got like a long time to get to the finish, like almost 20. We have more than 24 hours in our head. Andrea comes back and says, bad news, guys. They're talking about there's some weather coming in. They're talking about shutting the TA down. We don't know when, but they da-da-da. So it's 8:30 in the morning, and we're thinking we're going to have to pack up and go and then sleep on the beach somewhere. But then it eventually drug out a little more, and we were able to stay till noon and get some sleep. But then they were like, you need to get out by noon. And then as I was talking to Stefan, he said, it took me about a little over 7 hours to set the course, but that was me fresh, knowing what I was doing. You guys have been going a long time. you should have no problem clearing the course in 12 hours. So just be there by midnight. I mean, so I'm thinking same thing as Rodriguez. Stefan wants
Right. I just gotta be there by midnight.
He's given me 12 hours. He didn't shut down the TA in short courses, so maybe this right our bikes back. So I'm thankful that we're still full course. So I took him seriously. Be back by midnight. They also Heidi and Charla and all the folks at that at the finish line were waking up out of their bed to come cheer the team on as it comes across the finish, and then they go back to bed. Right. So midnight is a lot different than 3 a.m. Right. And so I think he said it to be respectful of the volunteers, to respectful of just all of this. And, we're like number 40th. Nobody cares if, we give up a checkpoint or two, it's not going to make a difference. So that's also what was in our head. And I'm standing on a dune. I can see the lighthouse. It probably already passed midnight. I know we're late for what Stefan told us, but I knew it wasn't a hard cutoff. Because that played into it too. It's like we could just take the road and be back 2 a.m. whatever, or we could fight through the water and the muck and the cold and do the rest. So that I just wanted to get everybody into our mindset at that time. In addition to us all four being at a low at the same time, we also had arbitrary midnight polite cutoff that we missed.
So in other words, it's still a little confusing, I think.
It is.
The only thing that is not confusing is that we all were in agreement. Like not one of us said, no, we should go get that point. And that's
right.
I kind of regret just a little bit because
Chip, I think
it could have been me to say that.
Chip was a little bit. I could tell Chip was a little bit like, but he wasn't going to fight it that hard because he was hurt too.
I was still feeling bad. If I was feeling good, I would have been like, I'm putting my foot down, but
It didn't have that much conversation about it. It was kind of quick. It was kind of like, we weren't necessarily disagreeing about it. That's my opinion. But Lou hasn't said anything about it.
I will tell you that even making that decision, it didn't alter much about like where you guys finished overall.
No, it was a few places. Well, that was kind of it. It was like, what hurt was getting all the points, really, not the placing, right? It was only a few places. We knew that. But what hurt was, just missing a few points, the very freaking end, but I mean, we were hurting that bad. We really were.
I got to give Lewis credit. All of us are in Lewis's head saying we don't want to drag him through this. But the minute we're like, dude, we got to head back. And he was like, if you guys want to get the point, I'll go get the point.
Yeah, Lewis was all about whatever we wanted to do. Yeah,
he was like, "I'll do it. I'll walk through the water if you want." So I got to he's the one that probably put the thing in our mind that we could actually do it.
Well, because you still had to walk back like about 20K from where you were at the point that you were at to the finish. Yeah, so it wasn't like just a quick, hey, let's turn around and go to the finish line because it's right there. So look, I want to tell you from all of your fans out here, you guys did an amazing race. What you accomplished is never in question. It was an absolute pleasure getting to track you guys and follow you guys. I told you guys at the beginning of this that I feel like I'm a part of your family now because I was in your business for so much for that time. And I really enjoyed it. I know that all of your fans did. We're so proud of you. And I hope that you're proud of yourself because you guys accomplished an amazing thing. And I really do think that thisABILITY has cemented their place as one of the best teams in the world. And listen, you were third, American team with a hard fought down to the wire battle with Ozark for second. And I think you guys should be very proud of what you accomplished. And give me your last thoughts. I know we went over, which we seem to do a lot, Chip. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's 9 days.
But, right? It's hard to cover 9 days in an hour. But I'm glad. Give me your final thoughts and the thing that you took from this race and that you will take with you forever.
Start.
Well, I'm just super thankful for my teammates. Lewis and Caitlin and Chip, you're really hardcore and you made me a stronger person. So I appreciate that.
Oh, here we go.
There we go. Shit show showing up.
This is what I wanted right here. I wanted tears.
Yeah, Yeah, we went through a lot together, and they're really inspiring people. So I appreciate that.
Lewis, Caitlin?
Ladies first.
So, just an incredible experience. The highs and lows that we experience. I mean, you experience them with every race, but in this one, it was definitely magnified. We had the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, and we did really well. I mean, I'm really proud of how we did. I think our navigation was on point. We had a couple errors, but over the course of 9 days, it really wasn't much, and I think we just worked really well as a team. Whenever someone was feeling low, we worked together to try to lift them up. Lewis, with your feet, I mean, gosh, I was just amazed how much you pushed through. And I tell you, Lewis never complained once, and he was committed to doing whatever the team wanted to do. And so I appreciate that. And then Andrea, oh my gosh, she was super strong the entire race. I don't think she ever lagged behind the team ever when we were moving. And then with the nav, she was on point. Like she and Chip both, the nav takes a toll on you. It's hard to do nav for 9 days straight. And she and Chip are just a great team on that nav side, and they fed off one another. And they did absolutely amazing. And then Chip's always strong. At the end of the race, when Chip started to get really tired, it's really the first time I've ever seen him kind of be at a low. I've never seen Chip be at a low. He's always the one that's super strong, and he's got a smile on his face. So that just tells you how tough the race really was when you see Chip starting to be affected after 9 days. But overall, again, super proud of the team. I think we did awesome. I'm proud of our placing, really just wanted to finish, and we did that. So I think we accomplished our goals and came out of that, stronger as a team and teammates.
And if I remember correctly, like over half the teams, I think, either had to drop out or had a teammate drop out. Like just the fact 4 of us got to the finish full course was a huge accomplishment. I mean,
I think there were of the 109 teams, I think there were only 42 that finished with all 4 of their teams on the full course.
Right.
Wow.
And that was our goal. Mm-hmm. But I guess for newer racers out there, I know this probably sounds crazy to go from your backyard 8, 10, 24-hour race. It's hard to just think about this 9-day thing, but the human experience that you go through probably after day 3, but especially into day 5, 6, 7, you just can't understand it until you go through it. And I think that's why we keep doing it. Yes, it's scary. Yes, it's dangerous. Yes, it's expensive, but it's like, you can't get to that level of human experience just day to day. It's really got to be a huge goal. It's got to be super hard. There's got to be some risk, and you got to do it with people. You can't do this solo. Who do you high five at the finish line? So the fact that 4 of us walked across, we have that experience for the rest of our lives.
Lewis, tell me your final thoughts.
It's really hard to find other 3 individuals that you can spend 9 days through pain, suffering, laughter, so many ups and downs, and still be friends after the finish line, right? So I love this team. Like, I know I've been doing this for a while, but I'm truly in love with this team and with these folks. I mean, and I know I probably slowed the team down. I think, like, if my feet wouldn't have been an issue, we would have probably placed a lot better. Ooh, I got blurry. So I take that with me, but I really love this team, and I hope that we get to race more. I hope that we have more experiences together. But I just feel like this is, my American family, as I like to call it, right? And I feel like I know things about them that nobody else probably knows now, that I'm not going to share on camera. But that's and for the people that are listening, that are getting into the sport and are listening to this, that's the beauty of this sport, right? It's the places and the adventure and getting lost and having those rights to tell people, oh, I did an adventure race, and I was out there in Africa for 9 days or whatever. But for me, it's not all. It's not for me. Not the major thing for me. It's not that. It's this, right? That's why when the camera caught us in the middle of the road, I got emotional. How do you feel? Like the scenery and these people, right? And it's really hard to find people like that where you can shed a tear and feel good about it, and where you can laugh and feel good about it, and man, be dragging yourself and know that they're going to be there for you. So thanks again, guys. I mean, it was an incredible experience. Thank you, Caitlin, Chip, Andrea. You're the only other two women that I've slept spooning with. While I'm married. But thank you. I really thank you for everything.
Well said. Yeah.
Chip, any final thoughts?
No, I mean, it seems like we've said it. It's an amazing sport, amazing thing that having a team do these things. I just hope I can keep doing it as much as possible. It's where I always said it's where I feel most alive. So I just encourage everybody. I know it's hard and it's scary, but take adventure racing as far as you're comfortable taking it, and I think it'll change your life.
Well, I'll just say in closing, thanks again. You guys were courageous. You were inspiring. And I know that everyone watching just loved being along with your journey. So thank you for carrying us all in your packs with you, because we were all there. Thank you. Thanks everybody for watching today. I can't wait to do more of these. Follow along on our new channel on AR.watch on Instagram and Facebook. And we hope to see you out at more races. Thanks, Chip and Andrea, for letting me be a part of the thisABILITY family. And we'll see you guys on the next one.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you so much for facilitating this, and thank you for all you're doing to promote our sport and keep people in it, even though they're at home comfortable. So we all appreciate it.
Thanks.
Hey guys, have a good one.
All right.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please take a moment to leave a rating and a comment.
If you have a question for the next mailbag segment, call 757-354-4795 and leave us a voicemail or a text with your name, city you are calling from, and your question.
To find additional content, including the video versions of these discussions, you can search for thisABILITY Racing on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
We hope this podcast inspired you to focus on your abilities and plan your next adventure.
See you on the trail.